Hey, it's Lyle Lansdale, Program Chair of the Washington County Historical Society. I'm here with David Brooker, our current president, and videographer who is unseen but indispensable. And we are in the old jail on the Sandersville Square. Here's a beautiful painting of the old jail. This year, July 2021, is the 45th anniversary of the Historical Society. In 1976, there was a bicentennial committee here in the county celebrating the 200th birthday of our country, and they determined that we should have a historical society. They had a nominating committee that chose the officers. They chose Cecil Hodges as the president and Mary Alice Jordan as the secretary. Other board members were Charlie Smith, Bertie Newman, Lewis West, Jewel Turner, and Charles Jordan, and Gladys Rice. We were very fortunate to have an interview with Miss Mary Alice Jordan last month in June of 2021. At 100 years of age, she is the remaining founding member of the Historical Society. She will talk to us about her memories of the early days. You'll hear about how they managed to put their headquarters in the old jail. They managed to transform it into their first museum. And Miss Mary Alice goes on to describe how they acquired items for the museum. And then she will tell us some cute stories about children who came to visit the museum on educational tours. And now we're going to see our interview with Miss Mary Alice. Miss Mary Alice Brim Jordan arrived in Sandersville in 1945 to teach at the Sandersville High School. She was the librarian and director of special projects for the senior class. And then in 1948, she married Buddy Jordan and helped him run his florist shop. She was very busy being teaching and being the mother of two, and active member of both the Transylvania and the Pilot Clubs. And now we'll listen to Miss Mary Alice.
Let's go back now to the earliest times. I don't know really, there was a whole string of people that were interested in in July the 4th, bicentennial. And so, of course, Howard Shepherd stepped forward for a lot of the leadership. And after all the organization came forth, there were committees to decide on real purposes for having the society. We had started the society, and Cecil came up with the idea that we had to have a place to meet and to do our business. And so we called it our first museum. And we talked to the commissioners, and it just, when he didn't get the idea until he heard that they were building a new jail out in the country. And when they got it built, he says, you know, that old house, it would be perfect for us. And so he just went to them and talked to them, and they were relieved to have something worthwhile to use it for. So they weren't reluctant at all. And they came right forth and said, all right. And so their pictures.
It's just perfect, isn't it?
That it happened that way. That it wasn't anything that was a long process. It just, the thing in country was ready, they could move the jail out there,
Mm-hmm.
and but it needed a lot of conditioning. We visualized four big things that we could get done. One was to write a book, history book. One was to save the Brown House, and one was to establish a genealogy research center and a museum. That we needed a museum. Well, we had the building, so we just called this one the first museum, and we used it a lot. The one that Cecil talked the commissioners out of, and our agreement was that if we ever stopped using it for a museum, then it would revert to them, back to the commissioners. And of course, the museum there was the first division, and had a resource right there. So we just asked people to give us stuff. And we had one lady who would stay there at the house and talk to people when they would come in. And I told her to take anything they brought. You know, we'd fit it in somewhere. And then I have a list somewhere that I've written down about people who gave us cases. Charles, my son, was in a country store, and he bought a case, and so he brought it to us. And the Transylvania Club gave us 2 cases.
You mean display?
Display cases.
Okay.
Thank you. And well, you've got to have something to put things in, and valuable things can't just be out in the open. I must tell you a story or two, and then you can stop me if you want to. In the first museum, it didn't sound much like a museum, but we worked it because we had classes that would want to come there, and we would have a class scheduled, and of course the leader, the teacher, whoever, students, little boys, about like this. And one was that under one of the cases, it wasn't obvious unless you got down and looked that the floorboard had been cut like this and big enough for a person to get down in the hole and see what was underneath the house. And so when you've got, 20 or 30 little boys that are inventive, after a while I said, well, they were missed. I don't remember if the teacher had missed them or what. And so some of them ran to me and said, so-and-so, they went under the house. I said, under the house? How did they get under there? And I didn't even know that. And so they took me and showed me where they got under there. And they scrambled out, and they were just real cute. And I said, now, tell me exactly what you saw. And they said, well, we saw walls, divisions under there, but not much else. As everything looked pretty clean. Sometimes you find a nice Coca-Cola bottle that was, and in fact, I found one under this house,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't find it, but Charles did. Anyway, uh, they left and everything was fine. But guess what happened then?
What?
I crawled down that hole. I had to see what was going on. And sure enough, I figured that the wall was built to secure the main part of the building.
What?
And the and so the house and then the porches had a wall underneath that I guess maybe they took extra precautions because it was a jailhouse. I don't know why. I never did find out. But I did get under that. I didn't go far, but I went far enough to look. The other one, and I'll tell it quickly, there was still a bunch of boys. And so while I was talking, I remember what room we were in. We had accepted a vault from a store that wanted to get it out of their way. It was we had a hard time getting it in the back door in that very back room that was the kitchen at one time. Mm-hmm. So the teacher came to us and said, I've got something here to show you, and said some of the boys brought it to me, and it was a pouch of dimes, of pennies that now they found it, and I didn't know they were there. In this vault they found another little place that they could get into, and I didn't bother to get into it. And so we talked about it a while, and after a while the teacher came to me and said, "Do you want to prosecute?" I thought, prosecute? What are you? I said, "Certainly not. It's my fault that I didn't know they were there." And he thought that they were kept old ones that would be valuable, and I didn't think so. I just thought it was somebody in a store that kept pennies and just put them in there. So we got all that settled.
Miss Mary Alice has told us about the first of the 4 visions that the Historical Society set out to accomplish, and that was to have a museum. In this second part of the interview, she will tell us about the tremendous undertaking of writing our wonderful history book, Cotton to Kaolin, 568 pages of Washington County history. Miss Mary Alice took the lead on editing this book, she says, after pacing and praying. And you'll hear as the book evolved how the need for a genealogical center became obvious, and how the society allocated space for genealogical research.
So we were in the process of doing our first vision, and I don't think anybody called it vision or anything until I started this book, and I decided that was good wording. That we, nobody stood up and said we got to do these 4 things, but in a process, we did in a way. We do need a history book. We don't have anything that records. And the genealogy just sort of came along. We met at the jail once a month, and we had a committee and talked over everything. We just, what should we do next? What is important? we had a good time. I remember particularly there was one day I was going to the museum, and we had been talking about a book, and we had been meeting how luck or the Lord or somebody does things for them, for you. I don't know. But these two ladies had shown up and wanted a conference with us, and they were forming a business, and they would pay all the expenses of having it printed until we got the book back and could start selling. Once we started selling, then we owed them the money. And it was just such a great idea. Anyway, we had a lot of meetings with this ladies, and had gotten the money part settled, and nobody stepped up to do it. And so I was riding to a meeting down there, and it just happened. All of a sudden I thought, why don't you try it? It's something you've always wanted to do. Why don't you try it? And my answer was, well, why not? And so at that meeting, they were asking about all about who could lead it, who would do it. And finally, I said, well, I'm thinking about the possibility of being able to do it. And so they didn't, that was it. They just snapped to that. And so I got very interested in picking the right people to do the right thing. And I would go downtown, and I remember going and talking to Maurice Friedman, and we had a committee. And I guess I was bullheaded and went ahead and did things that that I knew had to be done. So,
well, you pulled a remarkable group of people together.
Well, anyway, it took quite some time, mm-hmm. And so that's how the books got started. and of course we had a big party at this house when the book came in, mm-hmm. And it was quite a to-do. Luckily, I had a lot of good help, and I will say very sincerely that all the things that I am credited for doing, I always give credit for a lot of other people for helping. And because you don't do things by yourself. You got to have people with you. And so the book, when we got, I know what I was going to tell you. We weren't going to include family. At first, we just thought about we don't have to have family
genealogy.
And I think it might have been Billy Veal that spoke up and said, yes, we do. But anyway, once we got Miss Elizabeth she was the leader of the genealogy, and we gave them a room at the museum, and of course later they asked for a room to come downstairs, and we cleaned out a room downstairs and gave it to them, which was better for them and us too. And So we just worked hard for 3 years or 2 years, 2 or 3 years.
Oh boy.
Till we got it together. But I would go down there every Tuesday and every Thursday and sit at the table in front of that fireplace that when you walk in the hall and the room on this side. And people would bring what they had written about their family. We had committees for each one of those, and people from each county on that committee. And so it took a long time for us to
People from
get
each of the
set
towns.
organized.
From each of the towns, you had people
Yeah, every town in the
county.
would have a church, would be on the church committee.
Those are great.
And then
great
we would have someone to be head of the church committee.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a bunch of committees. Toward the end, I said, we really need a short history of each of business around the square and in the main part of the county. And so she started it, and she says, you don't want this? And I said, please, yes, we do. And so she kept on till she got some sort of paragraph about each business that had been a business for 25 years or more. And I wanted a list of like all the sheriffs that had been. You can look in the book and tell what all list of everything.
Right.
School teachers, the kinds of schools. So I think you probably are tired of the first museum. It didn't sound much like a museum, but we worked it. So we gotten up to the Brown House.
Well, as you've heard, we have made it up to the Brown House. That was the fourth of the original visions that the society set out to accomplish. The first being the first museum, the second being the history book, the third being the genealogical research center. And we plan to interview Miss Mary Alice again about the Brown House. Her contribution at the Brown House spans 20 years, from the purchase and 10 years of restoration and 10 years serving as the director. And we do plan to interview her again, and we will bring you that installment also soon. We want to tell you that on this 45th anniversary of the Historical Society, we hope that you're proud that your county has not one but two museums. Can you imagine that there are other counties in Georgia or even in the whole country that have two museums and a very active genealogical research center that serves the public? Miss Mary Alice's minutes in 1976 of the first meeting show that they had enrolled by that first meeting 320 charter members. We need to rekindle that spirit. We invite you and encourage you to join us and watch our programs on our website. This interview is our 5th virtual program in the past year and a half. And as Miss Mary Alice said, as when she sat a group of school children down on the rug, she said, you need to take care of this place And you need to keep it going so that your children can come here and will have this place to come to also. And we want to thank you, Miss Mary Alice, for your years of service to the Historical Society, which total 34 years in total of hard work. Thank you so much.